Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, July 7th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, calls explicit and implicit grow among elected Democrats for President Biden to step aside. Meanwhile, White House launches it's Wednesday, July 3rd. White House launches belated blitz to push back and show Biden is up to the task. Convicted felon Donald Trump's New York hush money sentencing pushed back as prosecutors in court consider conviction in light of the SCOTUS immunity ruling. FDA approves a new drug for Alzheimer's. 12 former U.S. officials sign a letter accusing the Biden administration of violating U.S. law and of complicity in the Gaza slaughter. Meanwhile, Israel approves its largest theft of Palestinian land in the West Bank in over 30 years since the Oslo Peace Accords. COVID cases rise in 44 states. Biden administration reiterates obligations of doctors to provide emergency abortions regardless of state limits. In the wake of Supreme Court remanding a case last week, the melting of Alaska Juneau's ice field is losing snow 5 times faster than in the 80s. FDA bans use of BVO, bromided vegetable oil, in sodas and snacks in this country. And the FTC blocks the merger of Sealy and Mattress Firm. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Folks, we're getting some weird issues apparently on TikTok. Did you see that, Matt? Getting some reports of weird issues on TikTok. And yeah, I had look, folks, I was traveling in Europe last week, and that's why I got the...
Oh, last week? Didn't you get back 12 days ago?
12 days ago.
Oh, that jet lag can last.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry about that Thursday-Friday thing. Thursday mix. We are... we will be off tomorrow for 4th of July. And also on Friday. However, Friday we will have a new show for you where we've got Rick Perlstein, who I interviewed actually before a lot of the stuff that happened this week, but I think the tone of the interview is consistent with where we are at. And first off, I should say, sorry, really losing it. Emma, what's today?
Today is Hump Day.
It's actually like really, it's almost the end of the week for us. Yep. I got to say, though, it is, we are going off. We're going to be not here tomorrow or Friday. There is a sort of there's the law of news happens when I'm not on the show, but because you will also be off. I think probably we will be waiting until Monday until there's any more major news.
That's how this law of our broadcast typically works. Although if we're both out, perhaps we could have some sort of double big news situation, like Biden drops out and Netanyahu drops dead. I mean, I'm thinking really positively there.
All right, let's get Emma's wish casting aside.
Well, I'm in a positive mood. You know, it's really nice. Like, it's so freeing to be able to unburden myself from what has been and move myself over to the K-Hive now. You know, I'm crossing previous lines between the Bernie Bros and the K-Hive and bringing everybody together to support this movement. You know, buzz, buzz.
Let's get into this. We've got a lot to talk about. Things are moving very, very quickly, it seems. Yesterday, we mentioned this on the show, but hadn't seen the video at that time. Representative Lloyd Doggett from Texas, Texas 37th District, was on with MSNBC's Hallie Jackson yesterday. Doggett is one of the longest serving congressmen in Congress, at least
since 95.
Since 1995. He's also one of the older, you know, in his early 80s. He's probably on the left side of the spectrum of Democrats, but certainly entrenched in the mainstream. And so this was a big deal. And from what I've read, he also just felt like he had some type of obligation to do it because he was older. And here is Representative Lloyd Doggett, the first elected Democrat to come out and basically say that Biden should step aside.
Somebody who has been quite direct about how he feels about the situation. And that, of course, is Congressman Lloyd Doggett. Congressman, thank you so much for being on with us.
Good to join you this afternoon.
So you write that that you did not come to this decision lightly. Can you explain why you ultimately did decide to speak out publicly at this moment today?
You know, when my wife and I watched the debate last Thursday, we were so hoping for the momentum to overcome the lag that we've had in the last year. Instead, we were disappointed to see lies by Trump not refuted effectively and effective defense of the successes of the Biden administration. I was so moved by that evening that the next morning I was out to talk on the floor of Congress with our leadership and with as many of my colleagues as I could find to express the view that it was time for a replacement and for President Biden to step aside. Coming home to Texas this weekend, I would say that the input from my constituents has been 10-1 in favor of replacing President Biden on the ticket. And then with the Supreme Court decision on Monday, we know that if a criminal and his gang take over the White House, there will be no checks and balances from the courts, and a real danger that we could get a Republican Congress where he's basically empowered to do whatever he wants in the way of recrimination and revenge against his opponents and all the horrible policies that he would institute at home and abroad.
So there you have it. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And one thing that also strikes me about that is we're going to hear a lot more about the Biden administration achievements than Joe Biden's achievements over the next couple of days. Following Lloyd Doggett in the afternoon on MSNBC, Jamie Raskin was on Chris Hayes in the evening, and he was there to talk about the immunity ruling, but then this happened.
Well, look, you know, we are the party of democracy and freedom right now, and everybody is asking one question within the Democratic Party. And I know that's true of President Biden and Vice President Harris and my friend Lloyd Doggett and everybody in the House and the Senate and all of the members of the Democratic Party, the tens of millions of people across the country, which is how do we defeat Donald Trump? And how are we going to defeat the threat of authoritarianism and keep the progress of democracy and freedom moving forward in the country? And we are not operating like an authoritarian religious cult the way that the Republican Party operates now. There will be lots of discussion and lots of people weighing in. And I know this is a moving target. It's got to happen quickly. But I can guarantee you, Chris Hayes, there will be massive unity and focus on that task when we get to the end of this process. And it's happening very quickly, I think.
What process?
There's a process going on, apparently. And we're going to get to the end of this process soon. I was not, if you believe that Joe Biden is the candidate and there is no, and that is it, there is no process. There is, we need to move past this. Now, we should say that the Biden White House has announced that he's going on a blitz, which includes 2 campaign stops and 1 interview and a meeting with elected leaders, both Republicans and Congress. And that, when I read blitz, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what everybody's been waiting for. It seems a little bit late. He should have been out there doing this. I mean, I was saying yesterday or the day before, something like, do a 2-hour press conference. The other version of that is do a bunch of live events and get out there. And it's coming a week later. And the blitz turns out to be what seems like just a normal schedule, but including 1 interview.
Well, and his schedule has been abnormal this entire time, in the sense that he does do campaign stops with speeches, but he's not doing a high volume of extemporaneous interviews that would make sense for a candidate that's down to a convicted felon in the polls and has been for months, whether it be swing states or nationally. And then, so Raskin and Doggett, they're both in safe blue districts. And then that also ties in with reporting that we're seeing that a draft letter is circulating as we speak between safe blue Democrats who are drafting it to ask Biden to resign. So the frontline Democrats are obviously concerned, but I think probably this is meant to demonstrate the fact that this is more than the Democrats on the ballot whose butts are, feeling a little hot right now, with the polling going in that direction. So this, when Raskin talks about a process that's happening very swiftly, I think we can understand what that means. Yeah, look, I
just want to add too, one other thing is that Biden was scheduled to campaign in Wisconsin, and Tammy Baldwin doing okay in the polls to the extent that we know, but obviously still feeling like she's one of the Democrats who's anticipated facing a tough race. She has apparently decided not to campaign with Joe Biden. Canceled and we played that ad yesterday. This is when they start to feel that Biden is a liability, and there's a lot of different things I think behind this push, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And also what is being reported by the New York Times, though also being denied by Biden spokespeople. But just a word from our sponsor. Going online without ExpressVPN is like leaving your keys in your car while you run into the gas station. Most of the time, you're probably fine. But what happens if you come back and see that someone has driven off your car? I don't understand how people do that. I see it all the time, but I don't know how people leave their car running.
That's crazy.
I want to thank ExpressVPN for supporting the Majority Report. And here's the deal. Visit expressvpn.com/majority. You can get an extra 3 months free. And so what happens is every time you connect to an unencrypted network, doesn't matter if it's like in a cafe or in a hotel or coffee shop or airport or, big box store, your online data is not secure. Any hacker on the same network can gain access and steal your personal data. That means passwords, possibly bank logins, credit card details, whatever you got on there. Doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack somebody. Just some cheap hardware is needed. Literally a middle school kid, I mean a studious one, could do it. Your data is valuable. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person by selling personal info on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops hackers from stealing your data by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. I basically, it's just as a matter of course, am always hitting, making sure I'm putting my my VPN on. It takes one click. Most of the time I'm on my phone. I have it on my router as well. One click. And so when I'm out and about, if I ever need to use an internet, like when I'm in a box store or something like that, I got to ask, or the supermarket I shop in doesn't have great reception. I use the internet there, and one click with ExpressVPN, you know that you're safe. And again, it's one of those situations like where, for the most part, of course, there's no one trying to steal your stuff, but it's going to be that one time. Is it 1 out of 25, 1 out of 50 times, 1 out of 100 times? It's hard to know, but you can feel secure by securing your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/majority today. That's expressvpn.com/majority. You can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/majority. Okay, so we were teasing this before. You want to do the honors, Emma, with the New York Times? I mean, this makes sense, but it comes amid the reports that, and I don't know if you noticed this, but on every interview that we've played, whether it was like Raskin or Doggett or Nancy Pelosi, they've been asked, have you spoken to the president since the debate? And the answer has been no.
Yes, J.B. Pritzker said the same thing last night on CNN, and Caitlin Collins pressed him for maybe 10 minutes straight about trying to get him to say Biden should drop out. But basically, he was, because there was also a call with the Democratic governors, and they have not heard from Biden either. Or he said, I've spoken to the campaign, but not Biden himself. And as we speak, I think I saw someone reported the White House schedule, 12:30 lunch between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. There were reports that he hadn't even really spoken to her either.
There's also a new job posting for Kamala Harris, social media, to amplify her voice in the coming months. So
can I do that on the side, Sam?
Emma's been auditioning all morning.
Just a repeated posts of mama la, mama la, mama la.
The coconut emoji.
Mama la,
but
mama
it's
la.
interesting because the other part of that reporting is that he's not been talking to congressional leaders, which is odd at this time. Particularly, it's not like people didn't know on Friday after the debate that people were freaking out. So the normal course of events would be for the president to get on the phone with some key people and say, hey, look, I had a bad night. I get it. I took some, I accidentally reached for the Ambien when I was trying to reach for, the Zyrtec or whatever it is. And that's what happened. But instead, it seems like they have distanced themselves from congressional leaders, other electeds, and have only been in basically getting advice from Jill Biden, Hunter Biden, apparently his granddaughters. And like this is like insular type of stuff.
It's like Trump.
It's a little bit Trumpy, and it's not what you would expect for them to mount an effort. I mean, the obvious thing is you get your candidate out there and get them out there, and the obvious reason as to why that hasn't happened, because it's not like it would be weird for a presidential candidate to be all over the place in the midst of a presidential campaign. The obvious answer is that they just don't feel confident in sending Biden out there. And then, Emma, this is from the New York Times.
So Biden told ally he is weighing whether to continue in the race, the Times reported. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the White House was upset about this report, said that the Times did not give them enough time to comment, and refuted it. However, this does not seem far-fetched. You want to scroll down a little here, Bradley. President Biden has told a key ally that he knows he may not be able to salvage his candidacy if he cannot convince the public in the coming days that he is up for the job after a disastrous debate performance last week. The president, who the ally emphasized is still deeply in the fight for re-election, understands that his few appearances heading into the holiday weekend, including an interview scheduled for Friday with George Stephanopoulos of ABC News, and campaign stops in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin must go well. He knows if he has 2 more events like that, we're in a different place by the end of the weekend, said the ally, referring to Mr. Biden's halting and unfocused performance in the debate. The person spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive situation. Andrew Bates, a White House spokesman, said the claim was, quote, absolutely false, and that the White House had not been given enough time to respond, as I alluded to there.
I like how it's, if he has 2 more events like that,
then he'll know. Like, what is it? It just hasn't set in yet.
But here's the thing. The debate performance is not what needs to be recovered from at this point. It is the compounding effects of every freak out and everyone having eyeballs. 100%. The most apolitical people I know are focused on this right now. And I've heard things from like, this is why I don't care about politics, to this is why the Democrats are no different than the Republicans because they were lying this whole time about him. It presents a massive problem in that way. And that's why I said a few days ago that it's a huge benefit to the Democrats to be the party that listens to discontent and makes a change, because these are even, 2 deeply unpopular candidates. It makes Hillary Clinton versus Trump look like prime Obama versus Reagan in that sense. We're at this point where everybody is deeply discontent about the candidates. So it's an advantage for Democrats to change course in that regard. But that's the problem for Biden. It's not the debate performance. It's not about recovering. It's about the fact that there has now been a nearly week-long news cycle in which the entirety of the media is saying the same thing that the campaign keeps trying to get people to ignore and gaslight about, which is that Biden has suffered serious decline. I saw a side-by-side. It's not worth it to play because it was like a Russell Brand video or something. And I know that these are like Republican operative efforts. But the side-by-side of Biden in the primary debates versus the one versus Trump, it's night and day, and that was only 4 years ago.
And the line that they need to get to was in there, which is that Biden still thinks he can do it, but he recognizes that he's lost the confidence of the American people, and that's actually rather important in a campaign, and so he's going to step aside for that reason.
And I mean, I think that's setting up, defeat with dignity, I guess, or whatever it is, retreat with dignity. I mean, I think that it also just feels like what they're attempting to do to push back is insufficient. And it almost feels like, because it's not going to be enough for him to give a speech at a campaign rally. It's not going to be enough for a pre-recorded, edited interview to do it. Those are moments that could hurt him, theoretically, but they're not moments that could help him enough. I mean, he really needs to be able to show that he can speak extemporaneously. And they don't seem to be putting him into that type of situation.
And also, I mean, he needs to be able to change a narrative that is now united in he needs to be replaced. Or when there are open conversations about the replacement of the incumbent president, that's a bigger blow to the strength that he's trying to portray as an incumbent than the performance even in and of itself. The fact that
it reminds me of an old Ann Landers or Dear Abby column where somebody wrote in, Dear Abby, how can I tell if my relationship is in trouble? And she said, when you're asking that question.
Exactly. Right. When you're writing in to me. So, imagine just for a second a strategy of chiding people into not believing their lying eyes for the next 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think it seems to be untenable, and the real question is like, how permeable is that inner circle that Biden has done? I I think as more and more people come out, I mean, it feels like it's pretty permeable at one point, and I would be surprised if this happened any quicker than it's happening at this point. I mean, this has been pretty dramatic, and I suspect they're waiting for another poll to come out. Accordingly, according to reporting, there's going to be, or there has been, an all-staff meeting at the White House today to calm everybody. There was a memo sent out. That all-staff meeting, I've been in these pizza parties. Always beware when the boss brings pizza to a party. It's not a good sign. But when there's pizza, everybody's in the room. That is a problem. But they are apparently, according to this Politico piece, nervous about a forthcoming New York Times poll that's going to show more significant deterioration. There's been a bunch of polls. Some have not been as bad as others. None of them have been sort of devastating. But remember, this is a very tight race, and he was already down. So dropping more from that point is exactly the opposite of what you want, particularly after the first debate. We have been talking about this debate for a couple of months since it's been set, essentially. And the theory was get Donald Trump out in the public, and this is going to begin his deterioration of support. And the exact opposite has happened. And
I don't know how the polls are not devastating, though, that we read yesterday, the leaked ones that were internal in the Democratic Party you got to
wonder who is leaking Democratic polls in this instance. But
the CNN ones weren't leaked, and that showed Biden being down by 10 points against Trump with independents and Harris leading Trump by 3 points with independents. Yeah, that was the CNN post-debate polling.
Without a doubt. The next question is who will replace Biden? And I really think this is, listen, I don't know who would be my favorite candidate to replace Biden in a fantasy world, but I haven't had the time to engage in fantasy. The only person who really can do this, in terms of because we're 4 months out. I mean, we are 4 months out from an election, right? I mean, we're in July. The election's in November.
Hey, parliamentary systems do it. They, they have shorter elections. It's Jacinda Ardern,
but they don't have the kind of money that we're talking about. And so you've got $92 million in the bank in the Biden campaign. There is only one person who is eligible to get that money on day one, and that is Kamala Harris. There is nobody else who is eligible under federal election laws to get that money. The money can go through different various super PACs and whatnot to support another candidate, but that super PACs, they do not get the discounted TV rates. There is only one potential candidate right now who has an apparatus that pre-exists today, and that is Kamala Harris. She was part of that ticket. There's only one person who's really been on the ballot to some extent in all these primaries. That's Kamala Harris. If you wait until August to do some type of open convention, aside from all of the other sort of ridiculousness around it, you are giving that candidate only 3 months to campaign.
Let me read this quote from Summer Lee, who is the first member, I believe, of the squad or squad adjacent to weigh in on this, which is, by the way, smart, because if AOC or Ilhan Omar is saying, let's replace Biden, that makes it look ideological and probably scares some of the centrist Biden people away. But Summer Lee had this quote about Kamala Harris. She said, maybe folks don't want to hear, but we have timing that is running out. Time is not on our side. We have a few months to do a monumental task. It's not cheap and it's not easy. If our president decides this is not a pathway forward for him, we have to move very quickly. There's not going to be time for a primary. That time is past. The vice president is the obvious choice. She's sitting right there. She's already been in the White House and has the name recognition and has been on the trail, and the optics of pushing aside a black woman, it's not good. She said that on the radio this morning. So I agree with that sentiment. In an ideal world, as you're saying, Sam, would I prefer a different candidate? All joking about being in the K-Hive now aside, of course. I think Kamala Harris has issues as a stump speech communicator. I don't necessarily think she's the strongest person ideologically. I think she's a bit of a sieve and somebody who will go with where the Democratic Party is going. But there could be worse options. There could be worse options than a narrative that's crafted about electing the first female president in a year where abortion is on the ballot. Yep. There could be worse options than somebody who did co-sponsor Medicare for All when she got into the Senate. She walked away from it in the campaign, but at least she wasn't taking the Biden approach at the time. There could be worse people than who have had the experience of systemic racism, and she talked about busing. There could be worse people. And I know that there's a lot of dismissiveness towards her, but it's also about the negative partisanship versus Trump. And she can articulate issues, she can speak to the abortion topic, and she can be at least somebody who can campaign.
It'll drive Trump crazy too.
And let's be clear, it's not like there's huge expectations for her as a candidate. There's just not. I mean, she's not, it's not like there's surprise things that are going to come out. I mean, she really has, I think, more upside than downside. There's a couple of questions on the IMs. If Biden were to end his campaign, would he remain president throughout the year? I personally, I think it's very important that Biden stay in office, because if he steps down and Harris becomes president, while she has, I guess, some sense of incumbency, that means that there's no vice president, that there's a process that needs to happen in terms of vice president, is my understanding. And then you would have Mike Johnson, literally the next person in line of succession. And I don't think that's a healthy scenario. Stranger things have happened.
And I think there's things on Biden's sort of desk that she might want the lame duck to deal with, rather than her getting 100%. Right into office and being responsible for all of it.
And it seems perfectly fine that you can say something to the effect of, I don't have the stamina to both campaign and be president. I want to dedicate myself to the presidency, get us out of this inflation. We're wrapping it up, whatever it is. That's the nature of the story. Somebody else asked if Kamala stepped aside, is there some type of succession for the campaign apparatus and for the money? Certainly not for the money under federal election law. Right. Her name is on the essentially the forms. So she can get that money. Nobody else can, at least not in a direct way.
So when she ran in 2019, 2020, she said that she'd eliminate the filibuster to pass the Green New Deal. That was one thing that she did say. She also has been leaking to the press during Biden's support for the genocide in Gaza that she wanted a more sympathetic approach towards Palestinians, which I think was strategic on her part. I'm giving a rosy picture, but just take yourself back to 2020, and we all know who the two best candidates in that primary were, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, in that order. Who was the third person you would have preferred in that situation? Mayor Pete? Kamala? Right? I don't know. I mean, she's not the worst one that was running.
I would have been worried she would have lost, but yeah. I mean, at this point, I think she's a better candidate than Biden is, so...
In terms of ideology,
I think from my perspective, that's what it really comes down to, is that I don't know that Harris's stock has risen in my mind as much as Biden's ability to do this has dropped. And I think it's a different electorate on some level that Biden's going for, but I suspect that Harris's strength with unions may be stronger than we think it is. She spent a lot of time sort of in the background dealing with this union stuff. It's one of those situations where it doesn't seem like there's a lot of options either way. I mean,
no, I agree.
Like,
I'm just trying to she's been relatively low profile, and look, she was a cop. The marijuana convictions, horrible, and there's a lot there, but she's basically just a standard Democrat.
Yeah,
she's basically just a standard Democrat, and I think you can, as I said earlier, the way to talk about abortion makes much more sense when she's out there. And
well, that's the thing, is Trump will have to return serve finally.
Yep.
And I mean, there's just benefit of him having to talk with somebody who can actually be fluent on a topic like abortion.
It's also going to be interesting to see how he deals with her being a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
There was a theory, and I think certainly, understandable on some level in the wake of Trump in 2020, that you want the most sort of like bland type of person for Trump to run against, so that he could not inspire the anti-immigrant, the misogynist, the racist element of his support. And that worked in the context of Biden. It might be also interesting. I mean, certainly he was able to exercise a certain amount of, or draw on a certain type of misogyny when it came to Hillary Clinton. I mean, no doubt. But people have to remember, there was a part of the reason why I felt that she was not, as a candidate, right? Never mind in terms of like what her CV said, but as a candidate, she was uniquely ill-suited to go against Donald Trump, was because there was literally a 40 or 30 year cottage industry of demonizing her, taking her to a different level. The misogyny was so intertwined with people's perspective of Clinton. And frankly, I just don't know that you have the ability to develop those narratives around Harris in the same way, because he only had 4 months. I mean, this is like one advantage any Democratic comes in, is that you don't have the same amount of time to develop the negatives that you otherwise would. And
especially if you're a weak campaigner, the 4 months is actually kind of a heaven sent.
And increase the tension on it. Yeah.
Well, if there's a theory that a generic Democrat can win, you got 4 months, and they're all pretty generic Democrat at this point for most of the population.
Well, so to bolster your point, I think the misogyny about Hillary Clinton, it's all about, do you have wiggle room to create your own narrative about somebody? Hillary Clinton, as you say, after 30 years of Fox News, saying she killed Seth Rich or whatever the case, or that she stood by her man when there was this embarrassing
Whitewater.
This embarrassing sex scandal too, which also increased internalized misogyny with a lot of suburban white women. I just want to point that out there. There was everyone already had their opinion on Hillary Clinton by the time she entered the race. I saw numbers on CNN last night. Something like 7 or 8% of voters polled had no opinion, or Trump or Biden. They were similar in terms of no opinion had. The number for Kamala Harris was 22%. And when we're talking about the negative partisanship and the way that people feel about things like January 6th, how that polls with independent voters, how abortion polls with independent voters, the point is that it's an opportunity, and it doesn't have the baggage that you describe about Hillary Clinton, because some of the dismissive of Kamala Harris out of hand, I feel like, I don't love the undertones, even though, again, I think, like, from a leftist perspective, she's a flawed candidate, but we're talking about how can we defeat Trump in the fall. It's really this reflexive, like, oh, she's going to bring out the misogynists and the racists. Well, that's an argument for like never running a woman or never running a person of color, because right now Trump's as weak as possible. And so, do I think she's the strongest candidate? Not necessarily. But do I think this is one of the best environments for a generic Democrat to win a presidential election in theory? Yeah.
And look, I mean, the reality is, and I've alluded to this in the past, if Biden or Democrat, whomever runs, garners even close to the same percentage spreads that they did in 2020. So in other words, like the cohort that Biden leaned on, the younger cohort, has grown exponentially just because of the nature of where we are in terms of the size of the generations. And the one that Trump was most successful in has shrunken. And I would also argue that that difference in cohorts has also been a diminishment in the number of voting racists and misogynists. I mean, I think, like, progress moves slowly. And certainly the more younger people we have who are make up a larger part of the voting electorate, the less that electorate becomes racist or misogynist. That doesn't mean that we don't have misogyny or racism in the country, and that in many respects it's systemic. But when it comes to elections, it may have a little bit less salience than it did in 2020. And again, we're talking this election, the popular vote may be a different story. But when it comes to the electoral vote, we could be talking about 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 votes, maybe tops, difference between someone who wins the presidency and doesn't over the Electoral College. So it's a bizarre, we're in a bizarre world. We'll take some phone calls in a moment. I just want to draw people's attention. Emma, you've spoken at least to one person who's a signer of this letter.
Nell Sheline, who we'd had on the show before she joined the administration in a fellowship to talk about her work on Yemen, and she's been one of the more vocal members of the Biden administration. She worked in the State Department, who resigned over the genocide in Gaza.
There is another Biden administration appointee that quit. Do we have the letter? Can we put the letter up?
Here it is. Yeah. I can read this, Sam.
I can too. We're former U.S. government officials who resigned from our respective positions over the last 9 months due to our grave concerns with current U.S. policy toward the crisis in Gaza, and U.S. policies and practices towards Palestine and Israel more broadly. We are subject matter experts representing the interagency. We are a multi-faith, multi-ethnic community of professionals and patriots dedicated to the service of the United States of America, its people, and its values. Whether in civil service, foreign service, armed service, or political appointees, each of us has sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. Alone, we each made the somber and difficult decision to resign based on the individual circumstances we encountered at different times during these past 9 months as we performed our specific jobs. But today we stand united. The administration's policy in Gaza is a failure and a threat to U.S. national security. America's diplomatic cover for and continuous flow of arms to Israel has ensured our undeniable complicity in the killings and forced starvation of a besieged Palestinian population in Gaza. That it's not only morally reprehensible and in clear violation of international humanitarian law and U.S. laws, but it has also put a target on America's back. Pretty powerful stuff. I don't remember 12 people resigning, frankly, during the Iraq War.
Right.
We just didn't see it in the same way, which is sort of shocking. We should have. But I think, again, this is a function. I think a lot of those people are younger. Not all of them.
Right.
But a lot of them are younger people. And I just think we're in just a different era where.
And I mean, I wonder how the calculus changes if Biden looks like he's just like a loser. If, for instance, he stays on, I mean, even the careerists are going to be like, should I take a chance to get off of this ship now and save some kind of face rather than going down with it and never having resigned from administration doing this?
Right. Right.
It's possible.
And I think the later in the letter, they basically demand that the official policy of the United States would support Palestinian self-determination in some way. I'm if I'm not mistaken, they do mention genocide as well in this letter, but maybe I'm wrong. So don't take my word on that. But I saw one of the signatories was basically saying that there's a possibility, if there's unconditional support for Netanyahu, that an expansion of a war into Lebanon could endanger American soldiers, say, if Donald Trump gets reelected. And I don't know, the Israeli government wants to pull the United States into a broader regional war there. If it's our ally in the Middle East and we're supplying these weapons, that very much could tumble us into an immensely deadly quagmire, let alone like what this does to the people of Lebanon. It seems like an afterthought, but it shouldn't be. Because Netanyahu wants to stay in power. And again, like as we begin to unroll the failures of Biden and his team to adequately deal with his seemingly kind of more rapid decline in the past 6 months, you have to wonder how much Biden's weakness or inability to kind of see the moment clearly allows him to say, you know, like, hey, Rafah's our red line. And then they cross it and that's not really our red line. The inconsistencies could make sense if there's a leadership vacuum at the very top with Biden as well. Just a theory.
It's possible. I mean, the best that I think we can hope for is that in the event we do get another candidate, Harris is as likely, it seems to me, as any of them to at least apply some pressure on the brakes. And certainly if I mean, I got to imagine Bibi Netanyahu also a little nervous right now because I think there was definitely confidence that they probably had in terms of Biden's weakness. And certainly Netanyahu thought like, well, I'm either going to get Biden, who seems to be doing whatever I ask and is willing to take whatever we do in terms of not listening to Biden, to the extent any of that was sincere, or he gets Trump, who he knows is basically going to do what Miriam Adelson wants him to do and allow for annexation of the West Bank. Incidentally, I mentioned this as a headline. I cannot find the piece in front of me for whatever reason now, but Israel is planning to essentially steal the largest amount of land. They call it appropriate. The largest amount of land that they have since the Oslo Accords in the West Bank. You know, many times we've been told that Smotrich, the finance minister, is just, you know, he's just one politician in Israel as an excuse for his full-on fascist quotes and sayings. I mean, recently it was like, I don't care about the treatment of Palestinians. We should just kill them all, essentially. He is not only a settler himself, he is also the finance minister and is basically the prefect for the West Bank.
Yeah.
He has been hobbling the Palestinian Authority's ability to get any financing. I think he just relinquished it, but I think part of the deal was we get more, we steal more land from Palestinians. I mean, there's no other way to characterize it. You can say appropriate, but that's not, when you appropriate other people's land and have no legal authority to do so, all of those settlements are illegal under any semblance of law.
And it's been this way since 1967, by the way. I just want to say, like, these settlements have been a way systematically to ensure that there is no two-state solution, which, again, is a liberal mythology in that way, because the process of settling into the Palestinian land as designated by international law means Israel's just expanding slowly, and then they're ramping it up now in this time of, like, fascist death spiral. And we covered this 2 weeks ago, that quietly the IDF had transferred power in the occupied West Bank to settlers, basically roving gangs with guns, who were working under Smotrich. So it's the IDF essentially giving carte blanche to far-right terrorists and extremists who are led by Smotrich to oversee the expansion of these settlements at a rapid pace.
And I mean, this is that sort of two-step between, is this going to be administered by, say, the IDF military forces or, say, fascist civic leaders? That's the apartheid thing, right? Like, if the West Bank is not controlled by the IDF, if it's controlled by Israeli politicians, then that means that the people that are controlled in that should be counted towards the demographic that should be given, say, voting rights, for instance. But of course, they're not going to be. So that's why a lot of these groups have been saying, we're going to count those as part of Israel, just like you all do, and call this apartheid.
Well, you just call it Greater Israel. And I think that's just more accurate, because Israel controls the West Bank, or as you said, has a prefect over it. It's an occupation in the West Bank. And then in Gaza, yeah, they pulled out the settlers early in the 2000s, but they still imposed a blockade. They still control every movement. They control their water, their electricity. In no other scenario that wasn't heavily propagandized, we would understand that this is a part of the controlled territory of that country. That this is all Greater Israel. You can include, East Jerusalem as well. But that's not how it's spoken about. We're talking about how Hamas is some sovereign entity or something like that. No, that's the reality. And that's why we talk about a one-state democratic solution being the most equitable and the most realistic.
My plan was to take phone calls in the first hour, and it didn't work out.
We all believe in you.
Folks, just a heads up for next week. Tomorrow, there are elections in Britain. They do this just to spite us, because they felt bad. It's July 4th, of course. The British are still smarting from our independence, which is probably looking like more and more of a gift as each year passes.
Oh, I don't
to the
know
British.
About that. They got their own mess over there. I honestly think it makes me feel patriotic every time I look at it.
They're almost in worse shape than we are, I think. It's probably the case.
I mean, Jeremy Corbyn was kicked out of the party, and for all people who think we should not use the Democratic ballot line, well, he's fighting for his life as an independent right now. I hope he wins, but it just goes to show that it's not just as simple as easy as saying, I'm going to go independent.
Mm-hmm.
We will be covering that next week, either Tuesday or Wednesday. Also, on Sunday, elections in France, final runoff. And I think today was the last day in which you could drop from the ballot in terms of their assembly, essentially, their parliament. And the idea that there were... essentially, the left party had announced that if they were in a three-way race, they would drop out to essentially empower Macron centrists. It is unclear to me whether Macron's party has done the same, but I guess we'll have a better sense of that. Next week, we will be talking to someone about those elections. Also, next week, we will update you if you haven't heard. If something happens like Biden decides to drop out of the campaign and you haven't heard about that as of next Monday, we will let you know about that as well. We got a a great interview with Rick Shapiro, with Rick Perlstein on Friday, and a new interview. And also, just because this slew of Supreme Court rulings were so horrible, and also, look at the federal judiciary that has completely attacked, like even the last round of more or of less robust, more grounded, let's say, student debt relief in a pre-existing program was essentially enjoined by one of these Republican judges. We also know that Biden's, I would say, perhaps most important climate initiative in pausing the LNG export facility building permits, really in an attempt to scuttle them, has been reversed by a Trump-appointed judge. And it's unclear what's going to happen with that. But these are all very important things. We will we'll do a slew. Matt Stoller had a thread of cases already that are being impacted by the Chevron doctrine cases. And so because of that, we decided to put the entire, and not just the clip that exists out there of the debate that was really centered around this, that I had with Jimmy Dore in 2016. It was a completely impromptu debate, and you'll see that from the clip that we've done. It's a much longer clip that we're putting onto the show. I was talking about, I actually played the clips from his show, and then he calls in the middle of me doing this bit.
A lot of people may not even know who Jimmy Dore is at this point, Sam. Do you have like a one-sentence summary?
He was just a former, well, this is when he was at the Young Turks, frankly, at that time. And he ultimately was leaving. I got into that was basically where I began to look at him with a very jaundiced eye. I remember at one point I had run into Cenk at that tort conference, and Cenk Uygur asked me, like, what can we do to smooth over this thing with Jimmy and you? And I was like, oh, that's easy. Fire him.
Oh,
fire him now.
Brain transplant.
And Cenk did not listen to me. I think ultimately probably regretted that. I don't know. But be that as it may, Jimmy Dore is ostensibly on the left. And really, I don't, his politics, as far as I can tell, are all over the place. He platforms people like Candace Owens and others. But what was really problematic for me at the time was he was just injecting a mass amount of stupidity into his audience. And that was an audience at that time that we shared. I think much of his audience has become anti-vax and much more reactionary in many respects.
We talk about the misogyny that Hillary Clinton faced. I think there was some people who were, had huge problems with her as a candidate, but there were people who found a home in a commentary about Hillary Clinton with Jimmy that didn't feel productive. I'll just say that. And,
well, he was convinced.
My former colleague, Anna Kasparian, accused him of sexual, for some pretty extreme, sexual harassment comments. And I'll just say that based on vibes, that tracks for me.
The worst part was that he was both promoting the Seth Rich conspiracy, and B, convincing people that Hillary Clinton had Parkinson's. And I was like, there's just a dumb, it was clear where he was headed with this. He was chasing, clicks at any given time, or he was just, had some brain chemistry problems.
I would hasten to add that he was simulating the being to the left in the most radical approach, because two of his prescriptions from that debate is we let Hillary lose, so then we can get a really radical Democrat like Elizabeth Warren. I wonder if he would still stand on that. And also his prescription to the Supreme Court was, well, if they try to do anything really bad, the Democrats will stop them from doing it. And it's just like, you believe in the Democrats actually too much with both of those.
That's
beliefs,
exactly. But we are going to attach that to the show, and then maybe we'll put out a new clip of it, because I do think it is important. At the time, I never looked at it, but I realized, like, oh wait, we didn't even do the run up to the debate, because I was actually playing clips from his show, and I had told him that I'm going to do that, and he told me he didn't want to come on, but then apparently he was monitoring the show. Thin skin.
It's funny how that happens every once in a while.
You kind of know this. Even people do that, like, to this day, and just, take some cues from the show. Maybe it's just because we stream earlier than some other shows, and we can help people out. But
it's a tell. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you help this show survive and thrive. And you can IM the show via our app, majorityapp.com. All sorts of member benefits. Emma, and don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, fair trade coffee and hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. You can get the Majority Report blend. Emma.
On ESPN yesterday, we spoke about NBA and NHL free agency, a bit about the draft as well, in both leagues, but also the fact that the NHL decided to drop some extremely offensive and messed up news as soon as free agency kicked off, and that they are reinstating the three Blackhawks, both, the two executives and the head coach who helped cover up the sexual assault that was happening in the organization, as to not disrupt their Stanley Cup run. And the this league, which pretends it wants to expand, operates like a college fraternity. So youtube.com/ESPN show.
Matt.
Last night on Left Reckoning, record-breaking episode, because Emma Vigland joined us once again. We got 23,000 of you have already tuned in, so
really,
maybe 23,000 more. Check that out. We talk about our boy Joe Biden and how great he's doing, including a surprise, well, not really endorsement, but a lack of endorsement for Donald Trump that might have Joe Biden win in Tennessee. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
It's a joke.
The Haktua girl will not spit on Trump's thing, so...
Sam, does that mean anything to you?
So. What's that?
Do you want this explained to
you? Does the Haktua girl mean anything to you or no?
No.
Okay, that's probably good.
It's quite all right.
646-257-3920. We're going to put on the phones right away, ladies and gentlemen. 646-257-3920 is the number. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us
this? Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflakes says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump